Today on Pots and Trowels, it's all about apples, which is brought to you with the support of Cobra Garden and Darlac. I'm going to be pruning some of the apple trees. I'm going to be checking the fruits that we've got in store, and we're literally going to take a leaf out of our own book. This is Jill and I's book, Gardening and Cookery, called Gardening on the Menu, and she's cooked for me one of my favourite winter apple recipes, toffee apple pie, which I'll show you later. Well, now through until sort of end of February, early March is the ideal time to do pruning of apple trees and pear trees. Remember, we don't prune plums and cherries and damsons in the winter, we leave those for the summer, but these we can do when they're dormant, and it's the perfect time because all the leaves have fallen off. Might not be so good for you because it's quite cold today outside in the garden, but what we're trying to do with these apple trees here, and these have been planted now for 11 years in the garden. I planted them as small trees, and you can see they've made nice trees during that time. It's a case of just giving them their annual winter prune to keep them in shape. We keep them nice and open. We're just stopping them getting too big, basically, because even though these are on a semi-dwarfing rootstock, they would get too tall, and I want to pick the bulk of the fruit from standing on the ground rather than climbing on ladders. So what I've tried to do is to prune them so that I've got a nice open shape. Now, all varieties of apples respond slightly different to pruning, and they all have naturally slightly different shapes. So if you've got more than one type of apple in the garden, it might look slightly different, but the pruning technique is essentially the same for all of them. So first of all, what I've tried to do, and this is a half standard, you might have a bush that has branches coming from lower down, but it's the principle is the same. What we want to do is to make sure that inside the tree like this is nice and airy. You could actually get inside it. We don't want lots of branches growing into the center because that just makes it congested. It stops the airflow in there. So what I would do is I've taken any branches that grow in out, and to do that you just need a pair of secateurs, and there's one growing just here that if I leave this small whippy growth just here that's growing out of this branch, it will grow into there and make a big branch. So while it's small, it's easy just to whip that one out there, and I noticed there's another one just started there, so I'm going to take those out just to keep that center nice and open. Then the other thing that we need to do is to check for any branches that are rubbing together or crossing over each other. This, for example, here, this branch is growing right up through there. Okay, so it's not a big branch, but I'm going to take it off because if I leave it, it will get thicker and it will rub with that one like that. And likewise, just here, we've got this one that's arching out here, and it's quite close to that one. So what I'm going to do is just go around the tree and take any branches like that off. We want it so that there's plenty of air movement all the way through, and the easiest way to do that is to do it little and often. Once a year, just go round it. Now, this tree is potentially going to get too tall. It's naturally making quite an upward growth on there, so I need to reduce it slightly in height. So secateurs are fine for most of the work. Anything sort of as thick as my finger, I would use my secateurs. If it's a thicker branch, then what I would probably use is something a little bit bigger, a pair of loppers like this, and these are really handy because I can extend these, so hopefully I can do all the pruning without using my step ladder there. And if it's a tree that you haven't pruned for a while, or there's a bigger branch, then you might want to use something like a little pruning saw like this one here that just releases and locks into place. So if you're taking off thick branches, I would probably use something like this. But what I want to do with this one is to take off some of this height that's going up there, all these long growths. This is this year's growth on this apple tree, and you can see it's been a good growing year. It's made at least 2 feet of growth. Now if we leave that every year, this tree is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So what I'm going to do is go round and I'm just going to shorten these. You can shorten them just by half, but I'm going to do it by about 2/3 to a bud to there. And then what happens is I will get buds developing lower down on the stem, and we can already see this is a fruit bud for next year. So basically what it's doing is diverting the energy from making all that new growth into what will be the fruit buds. And all of these are fruit buds on these short twiggy bits that we've got. So what I want to do is just to open it up a little bit more, take out a little bit where it's congested. That piece can come out just there. So I'm taking all of those out first, and then I'm going to go over to my loppers. I'm just going to take that piece out there. So it's not massive amounts of the old wood I'm taking out, it's getting that balance. Now if I get my loppers, we can go a little bit higher, because these here, as we can see, are now getting quite tall and some are growing inwards. So this piece, for example, there is very erect in growth, and I want it to grow more outwards. So I'm actually going to take that big branch off there. So you might think that's quite a big one to take off, but it won't do any harm at all. I'm just going to take that off, just completely pull that out, and it's instantly opened it up a little bit in there. It's let more light and more air into it, and then I can reduce the height of some of these. So where we've got a branch like that and it's growing up, I'm going to take it down to this side shoot. So we're trying to encourage branches to grow sideways where possible, and then I'm just going to reduce the height of some of these. Take that upright piece out there. So with a pair of extendable ones, I'm just going to make them a little bit longer. I can pretty much do all the pruning in this tree. That one is growing into the middle, so let's get rid of that one, because that keeps that nice bowl shape, and we can just go round it, shortening these half, 2/3, a little bit less if we want to. So it's gradually thinning as we go round, reducing the height, and just to keep it nicely under control. So choose a nice day when it's not raining like today, get your secateurs, get your pruners out, and already just on this piece just here, we'll take that piece out, okay, and then if we look here we can see from where the camera's standing, that one is growing back up into the middle. So, and that one is really neither use nor ornament, so I'm going to take that one out completely and just finish trimming that up so we get a nice clean cut on there like that. That will heal over nicely, and again it's given us some nice air movement in there. Just shorten these long ones back a little bit. So I'm keeping roughly the same framework as it had initially, but I'm just reducing it down in size a little bit, and you can see on this piece here that I've done how it's going to look. So I'm just going to work my way around it and thin it out. We've still got enough old wood, lots of fruiting buds, so we'll get the blossom next year, so it's going to be absolutely fine. But it means that I can pick the apples without having to get Jill on my shoulders to do it. So I'm going to leave this for now, because we're going to pop back up just to show you the apples we harvested in the autumn, just to make sure that they're all doing okay. Just a quick reminder, if you've still got some apples that you harvested in the autumn, especially the late cooking apples that will keep right the way through the winter, just check them out. Remember, they need to be kept as cool as possible in a shed or a garage, nowhere warm, otherwise they'll just wither away. So as cold as possible, but just check them over. This is a couple of crates of cooking apples here. This one is a lovely Bramley, and I've noticed that most of them are absolutely fine, but there's a couple like this one here, you can see it's just starting to bruise, and so is that big one there, it's going there. So they will very soon rot now, and if they touch a healthy apple it will spread. So just check through them every week or two and get rid of any like that. Chop them up, put them on the bird feeder, and they will love them in the garden. Just keeps the blackbirds and thrushes happy. And then finally, if you're growing apples and you've got your apples like this, one of the lovely things you can make at this time of the year is apple pie, and that's one of my favourites. And Jill makes the delicious apple pie. It's actually apple and toffee. She puts toffee in there with the apple and it all melts together. It's one of the recipes in our cookbook. So if you're looking for a late Christmas present for a loved one or a friend that likes cooking and gardening, then this is ideal, because I look at growing 25 different fruit and vegetables in there with lots of hints and tips on growing them and getting the best out of them. And then Jill follows up with about 100 recipes and quick cook tips on getting the very best from your homegrown produce. So makes a lovely Christmas present present. If you want to have a look at it, it's on our website, which is martinfish.com, or it's also on Amazon. So if you want to have a look, please have a look at it. But this is it. This is the apple and toffee pie Jules made for me. It's one of my favourites at this time of the year. It's a lovely buttery pastry with the Bramley apples in there and some lovely toffee. I think it's Thornton's. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but it's too late. And it's just lovely on a cold day to sit in my shed with apple pie, bit of lovely custard on there, and that's it. I won't go back in the house for ages. Jill will think I'm out there pruning the apples and sorting the apples. Little does she know I'm actually eating the apple pie. We'll be back next week. We'll see you then. Bye. That is delicious. I'd save you a bit, Molly, but I don't think you like custard. I will save you a little bit, I promise.